welcome to another Humboldt Tea Time, and I'm really pleased to say we're here today again in the Eureka Visitor Centre, and thank you so much to them for hosting for us again today. And I'm here with Eric Black. Eric, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us for Humboldt Tea Time.
Hey, JKO, what's happening, bud?
And Erica, you're the guy behind Arcadia News.
Correct.
So more often you'd be sitting in this chair doing it the other way around.
Well, I do work behind the camera and in front of the camera, so I'm familiar with both setups.
Okay. Well, I hope this won't be too daunting for you to be on the other side today.
No, it's not.
Now, are you a tea drinker?
Yeah, I'm a social tea drinker.
Well,
when my
good.
friends want to drink tea, I drink tea.
Well, thank you for joining us for tea. Now, I thought today, being Eric Black, it would be too much of a pun if we did black tea. So we're going for something a little bit different. Now, I personally don't like herbal tea, or herbal teas, I should say.
And I prefer herbal tea to black tea.
So this worked out really well.
Yeah, because I don't like caffeine, so this is perfect for me.
Well, this is a combination of peppermint and ginger.
All right, let's see what's happening.
So I hope it works out. Have a taste, see what you think. It's certainly a nice colour.
Yeah, this is what we're doing.
Oh, it's certainly refreshing. Got a bit of a zing to it. Now, Eric, when I was trying to track you down, I found you on LinkedIn at first, your profile, and it said you were in the Bay Area. So I assume you've moved here from the Bay Area. So what brought you to Humboldt County?
Yeah, I haven't been on LinkedIn in many, many years, so I haven't updated that. Yeah, that explains it. What brought me up here was way back in the day. I was trying to get a job in radio, and I was trying to get out of the intensity and the traffic and the density and just the overall chaos of the city. And so I was looking for a job. Well, I had no radio experience, at least professionally, so I was looking for jobs in small towns because they'll hire you, as you know, if you don't have much experience. I was just basically cold calling radio stations trying to get jobs, and the guy in Eureka at KINS Radio, which is a radio station in Eureka in Myrtletown, was hiring. They hired me, and I've been here. I left and came back, but if you total my stints here, I've been here about 18 years. So I've stayed because this is the place to be, as you know.
Absolutely. So you really are now a Eurekan, or an Arcatan?
I'm Arcata guy.
Okay, so Arcata. So how long were you with the radio station?
A year.
Okay, and then what did you do after that?
And then I managed the coffee shop in Old Town, Has Beans, which is just down the street from here. For about 3 years I did that. I've had many different jobs. A lot of them were short term. I left Humboldt County for 3.5 years, and then I came back. And once I came back, then I've pretty much been working in the media most of the time. And I've worked for various news outlets around here. I've freelanced, so I mix and match. Okay.
Now, where did you go for your 3-year sojourn?
I lived in Sonoma County for about 9 months, and I lived in Israel for 3.5 years.
What were you doing there?
Same thing I do here, trying to figure it out.
Okay. Well, actually, our videographer who's with us today, who's our editor and producer, Rachel, she's actually just come back from Israel.
Oh, cool.
So she had a great trip there as well.
Cool.
So what, were you working in media there?
No, the main job I had there was I was the shift manager at a cafe, at like a half cafe, half restaurant.
And what was life like living in Israel? I mean, it's an unusual place.
Yes, it's different.
Yeah.
As far as how wealthy the society is, it's roughly the same as here. It's a slightly poorer society, but as far as your material comforts, you have most of the same things. But as far as the culture and the vibes and the accepted norms of interacting with other people, it's very different. And I could never get used to that. And I realized at some point I would never be able to overcome it because I am socialized as an American. The accepted rules of behavior that guide the way Americans interact with each other will never change inside me, and I cannot adjust to something else. And they regularly violate our rules, but it's acceptable in their rules. So they were not, people were treating me in ways that were hurtful to me, but they were not violating their own norms. And I saw that was untenable in the long term.
But 3.5 years is a long time.
It is.
So you stuck it out.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to see what it was like. I have some family there, so I wanted to see what it was like. But eventually I had to give up with my attempt.
Okay, so fascinating. But I haven't actually been to Israel. It's one of the countries that's on my list.
Okay.
But I'd like to explore it at some point. But that's good advice.
Right on.
But as a foreigner myself, sort of coming to the US, I do understand exactly what you're saying. It is quite a cultural shock. But I've been here a long time now, so I've sort of got used to it.
Yeah, I mean, and some people are just more flexible than others. I thought I was the type that was super flexible, and I found out I'm the type that's super rigid. So I never would have known that unless I experienced it.
Well, rigidity isn't such a thing that normally works in media, so I'm wondering how you've sort of adapted yourself, your personality then to deal with media situations where you're interviewing people, you're talking to people that you may not necessarily even agree with.
Well, but it's so different because first of all, that's a professional interaction as opposed to an ongoing interaction where you're having multiple encounters on and on and on. And even the people who disagree with me, let's say on some political issue that I'm interviewing, they're still observing American norms of how they interact with you, even as they give ideas that might contradict my ideas. But it's much more subtle than your politics. It's just much more subtle.
So you came back to the US, you came back to Humboldt County, you rediscovered your roots here in Arcata, and you've started doing something called Arcata News, which is very similar, I suppose, in terms of video interviews to what we're doing today. And you report, in your own words, on the controversy surrounding Arcata and things going on. What has driven you to go in that direction? What interests you in the controversies or just the stories that are happening in Arcata?
So Arcata is a super awesome place. For me and for many people who live there. And so when there is controversy about these big projects that go on in Arcata, there's a lot at stake because we have this incredible place, right? And if we're going to do something that's going to make it worse, we don't want to take this treasure that we have and make it worse. On the other hand, some people are arguing we have this thing that's already amazing and we're going to bring it to the next level, right? So either way, there's a lot at stake. And I feel that. What do we want Arcata to be? So, and Arcata isn't some place where you go into the desert for 5 days and you blow your mind and you have some crazy experience, right? It's just day-to-day life, but it's a very good place for day-to-day life. So much is at stake when we talk about how we're going to develop the future of Arcata.
Now, we actually had the mayor, Sarah Schaefer, on as a tea time guest about a month or so ago. And she has a great vision for what she wants to happen in the city and what she's hoping to achieve on the council. But as I said to her, some of it seems to keep continually being stalled. The housing issue, for example, that project just never seems to move forward. Is that something that you also recognize?
Yeah, so I have reported on the Gateway, which is this plan to basically allow high-rise apartment buildings in Arcata, up to 7 or 8 story buildings. The Lost Coast Outpost has reported on this extensively. Stephanie has written many articles about it. And people have opinions and they're very engaged and they're very involved. So it's, yes, it is stalling because what's going to happen with that is a huge question because it's going to affect downtown right at the heart of the action. And so people have all sorts of opinions and it's interesting. So I love reporting on it. It's quite an interesting topic for a news reporter.
Oh, definitely. And what's your take on it?
So in general, I support what the city is doing. In general, I want to urbanize Arcata. I think the idea of dense apartment buildings that have a lot of people packed in is a good idea for downtown. So that's one component of it. The other component is that they're considering building a new road through downtown Arcata, which is also very controversial. And on that topic, I am sympathetic to the people who are opposing the city's plan because I think the city has not yet explained or really, they have explained in a staff report, but they have not discussed among the city council or the planning commission that I'm aware of the alternatives to building this new road through downtown Arcata. And this new road through downtown Arcata is going to create problems. Now it's also going to create a lot of benefits. So it's not that I'm super against it. I'm kind of agnostic in the middle right now, but want the city to discuss the alternatives so that we can then figure out, are the alternatives better or is this new idea better? I don't think the status quo is tenable in the long term. Some people essentially are arguing for the status quo, which I oppose.
And you've also really joined in the debate on wind energy as well. That's something that you've become very passionate about as well.
So wind energy is interesting because I don't think some people understand how much it's going to transform this place. They are going to be erecting...
Do you mean positively or negatively or both?
I'm not sure, but in the future, if this goes through as planned, we're going to be able to walk outside from where we are right now and look at an 800-foot tall turbine that they're building in the Bay. That's the size of a 60-story building.
They are
right?
pretty huge.
This is 10 times taller than the Humboldt County Courthouse. Is going to be in the Bay. We're going to be looking up, holy cow, it's going to be crazy. Forget about the fact that we're supposedly like solving climate change or doing work to alleviate the problem of climate change. Just the visual impact is going to be enormous. Then you add in the fact that all these people are going to have jobs. At some of the hearings in front of the Planning Commission, all these blue-collar workers were coming in and saying, right now we have to leave Humboldt County to work in other places to get jobs. And actually, this was not a wind energy hearing. It was about the fish farm, but it's the same concept.
Yeah.
And they were saying, we like the fish farm because now we're going to be able to get jobs in Humboldt County and Humboldt Bay and stay with our families. This is obviously super important. And we're talking about mass numbers of jobs relative to the amount of jobs that exist in Humboldt County.
So it is going to be a very positive impact in terms of the economy, but also a lot of people are very concerned about environmental concerns. They're worried about whales, they're worried about birds, and all, and that is legitimate. But would you say that the economic benefits outweigh perhaps the negative environment issues?
Well, from what I've watched, it's unclear how these turbines are going to affect the mammals and all these fish, because most of the wind energy that exists in the world is a fixed bottom turbine, where the turbine is built into the sea floor with the same way you build on land, whereas these turbines are actually going to be floating and they're going to be anchored to the sea floor with cables. So we don't have as much information about the environmental impact as we do about fixed bottom wind turbines. So I don't think that's clear. But I am happy that there supposedly are going to be tons of new jobs for people. I think that's just incredible news. The other topic that I really want to discuss that I want to report on with wind energy, but I haven't been able to lock down the source that could really speak to this, is we have a reliable grid right now. Is it really worth doing this? Is the problem of climate change so extreme that we need to spend trillions and billions of dollars to change our source of energy? And is that source of energy going to be reliable, or is this going to be a huge boondoggle? There really aren't local sources that I've found that can argue this is just a boondoggle, but I'm trying to contact some national sources who continue to ignore me because I have a very small news site. But I would like to get some national voices that can speak to that issue, because that is an enormous question that is kind of not being asked.
And if you were to be able to ask that question, I'm just curious, what would your opinion be? What do you think is the answer?
Well, the local people that I've talked to acknowledge that we don't yet have the technology to completely cut the umbilical cord from our current sources of energy, right? You cannot rely 100% on wind and sun and hydroelectric and all these things that do not involve fossil fuels, because they're not dispatchable. We're not in control of how much wind blows, and if the wind stops blowing, we still need a lot of electricity, right? So the theory is you're going to store all this energy in batteries, for example. There are whole reasons why that's untenable, so it's unclear. Now, people who are pro the wind energy project will acknowledge these issues, but say we can work around them, whereas other people say, no, you really can't work around them. Fossil fuels are magic, essentially. They allow us to have unlimited, abundant, cheap energy, and that's what creates rich societies. And so this question of whether this is a boondoggle is not going away until there is a transformation, I think, perhaps we can get, it used to be you needed massive computers to store one gigabyte of memory. Now you store 1 gigabyte of memory in a spec, right? So the same thing could happen with batteries. I don't know the future. I don't know what's going to happen with battery technology.
Now, you seem very animated and very passionate about these particular subjects. But what else drives Eric? What else are your passions, perhaps outside of the news industry? Because you are a filmmaker, you are a documentary maker, and you also work in news, which is clearly your passion. But what else is there to Eric apart from these passionate subjects that clearly get you very excited?
All right. Well, so hobbies-wise, I like to juggle. So there's a pretty cool juggling community here. So I do that.
Now on stage or on street art? Or
no, I haven't gotten good enough where I'm really at the level of a performer, but I'm trying to juggle with my buddies and get better all the time. I've picked it up pretty late in life. The people who are really good, I think, learned it when they were younger.
Possibly.
So a lot of things are like that, but I'm still trying, so that's one thing I'm interested in. I kind of have a lot of interest. So I'm interested in foreign languages. That's one of the reasons that I enjoyed, that was the positive part of living in Israel. I like to learn foreign languages. I don't really have a way to manifest that living in Arcata and being a native English speaker. It's basically an interest that I had when I was overseas, but I don't get to manifest it now. I like to cook. I don't know. I guess those are my main hobbies.
So which languages do you speak?
So I speak Hebrew, which is the language spoken in Israel. And before I moved to Israel, I took some classes at the university in Arabic, so I could speak basic formal Arabic at that time, and traveled in Jordan and Syria. This is Syria before the civil war, so I was able to go to Syria. So I was able to interact with people in Arabic there, which was quite interesting.
Well, I wonder if I don't think the juggling is going to be your next career, perhaps, but you never know. But it's interesting to hear that you have that lighter side, because you are very passionate about the topics that you like to cover. And I'm just wondering where the future is for you, because the news industry has changed dramatically, and things like Arcata News and what we're doing at Lost Coast Outpost have become sort of the sources that people go to. They don't rely on, if you like, traditional news sources anymore. So I'm just wondering where you see Arcata News developing in the future.
Yeah, it's difficult.
For you and for the audience.
I need, monetizing my reporting is a big challenge for me. And
it's a challenge for anybody.
Yeah, and it's almost like I don't like to waste time on that, because I like to do the actual reporting. I don't want to sell advertising, and I don't produce enough content to really sell advertising, because each video that I make is very complex generally. I mean, there's differing levels of complexity, but I'm not producing every day or even every week or even every month. So that's a problem for any sort of business model. So I'm not sure how I'm going to make money. I freelance, I contribute my stories to news outlets, so I've done that, so I have made money that way. But the financial model is not my strength. Now I have another thing that I'm doing, which relates to news, which is my journalism instruction channel, where I basically train beginning and aspiring TV news reporters to write better stories. And that could have some monetary potential if I get successful at it.
Right. Well, there isn't that much of that in the industry, people who are actually being taught, very specifically writing for TV reporting, or video reporting, I should say. So I certainly wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
Eric, how is the tea?
The tea was good. I took a sip at the beginning and then forgot about it because we were chatting.
Have you? I finished mine. I mean, actually, I didn't. It's not really my kind of thing, but I'm glad it worked for you. Eric, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us for a Humboldt Tea Time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. And thank you for joining us for a Humboldt Tea Time, and join us for another Humboldt Tea Time very soon. And thank you again to our guests here. Oh, sorry. We are their guests at the Eureka Visitor Centre. It's always a great pleasure to be in their beautiful facility. Take care. Bye-bye.